The Metal Mentality podcast is brought to you in partnership with AM300 and the Phoenix Project. For more information on both, check out am300.com/metal. I felt alone, like I was trapped in a cold, dark room.
I will be the last to fall.
It seemed as if I felt a ray of light.
I won't shed a tear for them to see.
Be metal and stay metal with consistency, continually choosing to make choices for a better future. Fortitude, having courage while overcoming obstacles. Grit, perseverance of effort combined with passion while working towards being better today than you were yesterday.
Once I broke free, I never intended on going back. But I had made a promise that if I ever found my way out, I would return and fight to liberate those still trapped inside. You are not alone. Rest assured, I will be the last to give up.
These are metal-minded individuals, and these are their stories. You're listening to the Metal Mentality Podcast. Now, here's your host, Preston Ewell.
Man, every time I hear that, I get so pumped up. And I've probably listened to that 100 times. Let's get rolling with this. Today, my guest is the one and only Mr. Pat Welsh. Pat Welsh is an incredible human being. He is on a mission to develop warriors, servants that are leaders others will want to follow. Let me tell you a little bit more about him. Gosh, Pat, your bio is a novel in itself. But you sent me this short version, so I'm just going to go ahead and run off with this. Pat is an author, a speaker, a trainer, an expert witness, a retired major from the Dayton Police Department of Ohio. He has a new release, Warrior Servant Leader, Life Behind the Badge. It came out in 2015. He's a warrior servant leader. Behind the Life of the Cross, that's his other book, and is the co-author of the bestseller Healing Happens. We're going to talk a little bit about that, what that book is and what the story he shared in that. Pat is a dynamic, entertaining, and impactful author, speaker, and trainer who engages his audiences to connect and influence with others at work, home, and the community. Pat is most proud of his evaluation from the United States Air Force Security Forces non-commissioned officers after attending his mindset training he puts on there. Pat, how are you doing tonight? I'm so excited to have you on here. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Yep.
How are you?
I'm doing well, man, and thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
When we talked about a week ago, just to get to know you, and you shared a little bit about yourself and your mission, and man, I was so pumped up. I was so excited, and I genuinely could not wait for tonight. And I still feel that way. I want to jump right into this. The first question I want to ask you is Bigfoot real?
It all depends on your perspective. That was the lawyer answer.
I know. I didn't mention that you were an assistant district attorney. It's the best, worst answer I've ever been given. No, seriously. Pat, you live in Colorado. You have lived a life of leadership and just inspiring other people. And the way that we connected, I sent you a message on LinkedIn seeking help for a veteran. I said, hey, how can I help this guy? And you said, hey, let me call you. And we ended up talking for an hour and a half. And I was like, dude, I got to have you on my podcast. And now here we are. So that is the perfect example of who you are, that warrior servant leader. Let's jump into this. What is a warrior servant leader? How do you define that? And why is that important?
It's three components of one calling. I believe we're all literally called. Every one of us is called to be a warrior, a servant, and a leader, no matter what our station in life is, no matter how old we are. And I define a warrior as a person who is stands up, shows up, and defends what they believe. It can be your family, it can be your values, it could be another person, your principles, but you'll defend what you believe. You're not Kermit the Frog, that meme where he's sipping a little Lipton iced tea with he's got an opinion, but it's none of my business. That's not a warrior. And then a servant is somebody that puts the wants and needs of others before their own. You and I were talking earlier. We raised 5 kids. You have your 3 kids. We know having the height of servanthood is being a parent, putting the wants and needs of your kids before your own.
Yeah.
And then a leader it's a person of influence. John Maxwell said it best. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And if you can influence and impact the life of just one other person, you're a leader in their life. And so for me, my journey, which really began, I have a unique story, but it's only unique, to me. We all have a unique story. And our journey is a calling to fulfill, to be the person that God created me to be. And so what I've discovered my calling is to develop people to have that mindset, and they'll want to follow you and create other warriors, leaders, and servants.
Pat, we just became best friends. I don't think you're aware of it because we share the same mission. That's incredible. You said something to me when we talked previously about what our responsibility is on this earth. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that means to you and fulfilling that responsibility?
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that we are more than what happens to us. What's important is what happens in us and through our experiences, good and bad, and that we are each created. None of us are ordinary people. We're extraordinary. We were created, and we may do ordinary things in life, but we have to do it with extraordinary love. And I was on a show last night, and they said, well, what's kind of your driving force? And I said, literally, it comes down to this. You have to have a foundation that guides your entire life. And my foundation has grown from my faith and upbringing and my experiences. And it all comes down to this. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. And if you do that, and what I strive to do, and we all fail, but what I strive to do is that if I can love God with all my heart, with all my mind, and with all my soul, then how much more can I love the people that He's placed in my life? And so that keeps me grounded. It keeps me focused. It keeps me motivated. And I have a purpose in that.
I love how when you talk about God, it doesn't feel like I'm sitting in church and you're talking from the pulpit, calling me to repentance. Well, I am a religious person. I feel like what you're sharing with me is just genuinely you expressing yourself. And I think that that's an attribute that many of us struggle to possess within ourselves and share with other people without having any shame around it, especially the way society is going now. There's one thing that you mentioned. You said that there's no greater service than being a parent of children. And I'm going to share just a little bit about what happened today and how true that is and my experience with it. I got home from work tonight. I walked in and it looked like a feather pillow exploded. There were people screaming. The house was a disaster. And I made eye contact with my wife and she looked utterly defeated. And I said, "What happened?" And she said, "It's been these past 12 hours have been hell." And I said, "I can tell." And my 2 youngest were in the bathtub. I said, "Why are you in the bathtub at 4:30 in the afternoon?" And she said, "Do you see that big mess in the living room?" She said, "They got into all of my makeup and there's mascara and blush all in their hair." And she was super upset. The kids were splashing in the bathtub and she's yelling at them, "Don't splash." I'm like, "Hey, why don't you take the night off? Right? Let me take care of this." And I literally kicked her out of the house and said, "Leave. I got this." And I went into the bathroom, and sure enough, my kids had washcloths and it looked like wiping off this makeup, and it looked like they put war paint on themselves. And my 3-year-old boy, who has this light ginger strawberry blonde hair, had black mascara and this pink blush all in it, and I couldn't get it all out. I scrubbed it all out. But in that moment, I realized, as my kids were acting up, I could discipline them, or I could be of service to them. And when I'm not on my best days, I choose discipline because it's easier. It's easier to yell than to love. And so I just said, "Hey guys, what's going on?" And they were still all wild, just overwhelmed. And come to find out that my 2 youngest, who are 3 and 5, woke up at 3:30 this morning, had been up all day. And so, yeah, we cleaned the house up, and I ended up taking them to the store. I said, "All right, we're getting dinner. Pick whatever you want at the store. I don't care, as long as it's under $5. I don't care what you get." And so they all got Lunchables, and they said, "Can we get a treat?" And I said, "You don't deserve a treat, but I am fine, get a treat." And they got a treat, and we came home, and they sat down and they ate. My wife got home, and now they're in bed at 8:14 p.m., which is later than the normal bedtime. But you're talking about this service, being of service to people, and how being a parent is the greatest service. I 100% agree with you that you were right. Can you talk a little bit about your life as a parent of 5 children, and the struggles you had, and the lessons that you learned of how to be of service to them?
Yeah. Our kids were 13 years apart, from the oldest to the youngest, and the boys were on the bookends, and then had three girls in between. And I was a cop and working midnights over half my career. So, I had no normal life, no normal sleep cycle or anything like that. So it was very unique. I still sleep with earplugs, and I've been retired for 8 years because that was the only way I could sleep during the daytime with having 5 kids at home. And I think part of my journey, and I didn't realize it as we were going through it, is I was an absentee parent a lot because of my schedule. When I first became a cop, I worked 6 days off 2, worked 7 days off 2, worked 7 days off 4, and I was a real go-getter as a police officer. And we'd go on vacation, and when cell phones were finally invented, and my wife would be yelling at me. We'd be on the beach in South Carolina, and she's like, "Hang up the phone, we're on vacation." And I'm talking to an informant because I was working, narcotics. So I had a lot of failures as a parent. My wife, at one point, this is after the kids were grown, said, I felt like a single parent. My wife said that. She felt like a single parent raising 5 kids. And what got my attention and actually several of the kids were grown and out of the house, or not several, I guess it's 16 years ago. So in 2004, my wife was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And that was my wake-up call as a husband and a parent. And we've grown a lot since then. And a lot of it came back to God getting my attention in a very dramatic way. I'd rather he get my attention in a nice, quiet, casual conversation ways. But
I think he tries. Yeah. And it gets dramatic because we're not listening.
Yeah. So I've grown tremendously in the last 16 years, and I'm going on 63 years old. So I was kind of a late bloomer when it came to a lot of the stuff that I share now. But looking back at my life, I mean, from the time, there's in Jeremiah, and I'm not going to go preaching on you, but there's a scripture that says that God knew me before I was formed in the womb. And I've come to understand and believe that, and that he consecrated, and he was talking to Jeremiah, but he knew Jeremiah before he was formed in the womb, and he consecrated him. That means he had a purpose for Jeremiah long before he was ever even conceived. And looking back over my life, I see that, and I see it in the lives of everybody I meet. When I hear their story, it reaffirms for me, God is good, and he knows what he's about, and we just have to listen. And that's the hardest thing. I mean, for a lawyer, and I was a lawyer, I was a DA before I became a cop. So in my entire adult life, I've been in the law enforcement arena, and it is the most difficult thing I had to learn was how to be an active listener instead of barking orders and being in charge and telling people what to do and gaining compliance. Because I treated my family that way. I treated them like I was a cop and they were the bad guy, and it took a lot for me to overcome that over a period of, I was a cop for 26 years. So it's been quite a journey.
You speak with wisdom, and I know from previous conversations that I think you just get it. You get what life is about. And you talked a little bit about being an absentee parent. How have you made sense of that in your life now, and how have you made amends? Or do you still feel like you have regrets?
No, I don't have any regrets. One of the things I say is, have you ever accepted an apology that was never given? And that forgiveness is essential to, what's the word I want to use? To restoring relationships. There has to be forgiveness. And so one of the things I did have regrets. I was disappointed in myself, and it wasn't until I came to the realization to forgive myself was the first step in being able to reconcile with our oldest son. We threw him out of the house when he was 18 years old, and I mean literally. It happened over the phone, and my wife's on the phone with him. The next thing I hear her telling him is, "Hey, all your shit's going to be in the trash bags on the front porch. When you get home, the door's going to be locked, and don't ring the doorbell." And she did. She went up and his baseball trophies and his clothes. I mean, everything. She put in trash bags and put on the front porch. And it took probably about a year, and he never did come back home to live after that. We reconciled, but it all began with having a moment of forgiveness, both of ourselves and forgiving him for how he was treating his one sister. That's what got him thrown out of the house. So I think the biggest step I took was coming to that realization that forgiveness has to be offered. And then being able to, we all tell our kids when they're little, "Oh, I love you," and all that kind of stuff. And at some point, it seems like they reach an age and we quit saying that, and we quit hugging them. And so I have learned to say I love you, to hug my kids, to hug my son, all three of my son-in-laws, and genuinely mean it. So it's all part of a mindset. Yeah. If you change the way you think, then you'll change the way you act. And I had to learn to accept the concept and the reality of forgiving people, because cops are not very forgiving individuals. The nature of our jobs, we find it difficult to forgive people because of what we see.
I know you guys definitely see some horrible things that by doing so, you're protecting other people from having to see that type of stuff. And it's a burden that you choose to carry. You choose to be of service and carry that for other people, so that the majority of us don't have to. And I think that goes overlooked. And I just want to say thank you for your service to the communities. I think, especially in the society we live right now, that our police officers are grossly undervalued. And it's a shame. It's a shame that we've arrived at this point as a society. And I don't know what the solution is, but I don't want to get into that, because this show is not about politics. And
I agree.
This show is about being resilient and becoming a better version of yourself, and learning how to fight for yourself. You said something about how God got your attention in a dramatic fashion, and that you were disappointed in yourself and you had to learn how to forgive yourself. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, he's gotten my attention several times. The 2004, with my wife's ovarian cancer. Growing up, I had a traumatic head injury. I was in a coma. Some other ailments growing up. So the odd part was that I recognize that as now I call them holy moments. They were opportunities for me to get closer in a relationship with God, and I did, but usually it only lasted for a short time, because you fall back into your routines, and you become what you celebrate. And I celebrated excelling academically in school. I celebrated having what I thought, hey, I'm going to be a lawyer, and graduated and passed the bar exam. And I was celebrating all the wrong things. When I was a cop, I celebrated being a go-getter and commendations and all that. And I was all at the expense of my family. And so in these God moments, I've learned to recognize them now for what they are, and have done the things to get disciplined, so that it's not a candle that, gets blown out.
Yeah. So, man, that's good stuff. I got so many notes here, and I don't even know where I want to go with this, because I feel like every time you talk, I got about 20 questions, and then you answer that questions, and 20 questions come because you're full of wisdom and knowledge. I'm just going to say that. But let's say I'm talking about things I've done in the past, and I'm having a hard time forgiving myself. And let's say I'm identifying myself by my failures. And I feel hopeless, and I feel like I'm just a giant walking piece of crap, right? How would you tell me to forgive myself?
Well, first thing I would tell you is you need to choose what voice you're going to listen to, and because we all have that voice going on in our head. And I have learned to consciously listen to a voice, and I'm not big on acronyms, not like the military where you guys have an acronym.
I don't even know that.
Yeah. You got acronyms for everything. Yeah, you do. And but the word voice for me, like, there's two big acronyms I use. One is you have to care, and care means commit all resources and energy. So if I say I care about you, or I care about a cause, or I care about my faith, I care about my family, I have to live out that I am willing to commit all resources and energy to what I say I care about. So with about the healing from forgiveness, it comes down to what voice are you listening to? And because there's two competing voices going on in your head, and one's the voice of God and one's the voice of Satan. And Satan's really slick about it, that attacks you and uses one of the greatest gifts man has is the ability to rationalize. We're thinking human beings, and one of our biggest burdens and downfalls is we rationalize. And so, what voice are you listening to? And is that voice, is it calling you to virtue? Is it calling you to obedience? Is it inspiring you? Is it creating compassion in you? And does it make you excited? As you take the voice, VOICE, and if the answer to those are yes, that what you're hearing is calling you to virtue, and what you're hearing is calling you to obedience, meaning an ethical way of life, and all those things, then that's the voice you should listen to. If the voice is condemning you and telling you what a piece of crap you are, you'll never amount to anything, you never should have been born, all those things, because I've had those go through my head, that's not the voice of God. And, you know, and I genuinely, I seriously, when I talk about forgiveness and accepting an apology that was never offered is the key to restoring relationships. Is the ultimate example of that is Christ is on the cross and he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. There wasn't one single person standing at the foot of that cross that put him up on that cross that go, hey, dude, my bad. Sorry. We shouldn't have done this. Yet here he is with his dying breath, ask God to forgive them. So if Christ can do that to the people that crucified him, how much more can we do that for ourselves and do that for people that have offended us, even if they never apologize? And I've had personal experience with that. I had a command level person come after me in my career and tried to get me charged criminally, tried to get me fired, tried to get me demoted, got me suspended. And I mean, it was a year and a half of hell. I mean, I sought out on my own psychologist. I needed somebody to talk to. I had panic attacks. It was just a year and a half of utter bullshit hell, but I got through it. I was exonerated of everything. In fact, I got promoted to being one of the top 3 command level people in the department, but I held on to that anger against this person for 5 years. Even after they had retired, I would say stupid stuff like, man, if they die before I do, I'm going to go piss on their grave. That's how angry I was. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I came to a realization that anger and really hatred was doing more harm to me than it was to them. It wasn't doing anything to them because they didn't like me in the first place. Mm-hmm. And I consciously, literally said to myself out loud, nobody else in the room, I'm not going to say their name, but by name, I said, I forgive you for what you did to me. And then that burden really was lifted off of me. And it made a tremendous impact on my daily attitude. Because I'd start getting angry about a lot of things, all because that voice I was listening to was telling me, yeah, that person, you know, they're a piece of, you know what, and all that kind of stuff. I was listening to the wrong voice. And I did that for 5 years. And that's no way to live.
Hatred is a heavy burden to carry, isn't it?
It is. It is. Because hatred is driven by lies. When you hate mm-hmm. somebody, it's because you believe something that's a lie. Whereas love is not. Love is believing in the truth.
Yeah, you're believing everything bad about them is all that they are. You're not looking at the good that they have to offer in the world.
You're right. Whatever you're looking for, you'll always find more of it. So if you're looking for the worst in people, you will always find the worst in people. If you're looking, whatever you're looking for, that's what you'll find more of. So if you're looking for the best in people, if you're looking for how to love people, you know, and everybody goes, what's love? Well, it's real simple. It's there's a whole scripture that describes it. Love is kind, love is patient, love doesn't hold grudges, and love seeks the truth and believes in the truth. And that's how we need to treat people. You still hold them accountable. I loved my kids when they were growing up. They still got disciplined if they did something wrong, but they weren't disciplined out of my anger.
And like I talk about the situation I had tonight, is that am I going to discipline or am I going to serve them? At times, disciplining is a form of service, but I think there's a fine line between that. I want to share a little bit of an experience I had about holding a grudge against somebody, and the freedom that I felt when I decided to give them forgiveness when they didn't apologize to me. I worked for a supervisor for 3.5 years, and I was due a promotion just by staying there for a year. It was just a time promotion. He never gave it to me in that 3.5 years. There was always something a flaw that I had to work on. I'm like, this has nothing to do. It's an experience, time and experience. That's all that is. And he wouldn't give it to me. And like over this 3.5 year period, the resentment that I held towards him became more and more heavy, to the point where I dreaded every single second that I was there, and I knew that he was there working at the same time. If he left for any reason, it was like a vacation. Just knowing that and every time I saw his face, my blood pressure rose and my adrenaline kicked in, and I couldn't even talk to the guy and be confident and be myself, because I was so pissed off at him. And it wasn't until his retirement. He had his retirement ceremony, and we were cleaning up afterwards, and he was saying goodbye to everybody or whatever. And I found myself to be the only one in there. I was sweeping up the floor, and he was talking to, it was me, this guy, and one other person that he was talking to. And I looked around and I said, what the hell am I doing in here? Like, why am I still in here? And I chose to listen to the different voice, not the one that told me all the lies. This is, you just need to thank him. And I turned around and he was going out the door, and I was like, oh man. And I chased after him and called him out by name. And he turned around and I said, hey, I just want to thank you for hiring me and giving me the chance to work here. It has changed my family's life and has provided us with an opportunity I wouldn't have normally. So I just want to say thanks. And he looked at me like, I hate you, right? Like, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And I just stood there. I was like, what just happened? And he said, thank you, Preston. That means a lot. I wish you the best of luck. You're a good dude. And that was like the nicest thing he'd ever said to me. And he walked off, and I was just like so overwhelmed with emotion. I keep talking about now, like, I feel that, like that peace that came into my life. And I think a lot of times we hold that hatred and that resentment, not towards somebody else, but towards ourselves.
Yeah.
So if I felt that way towards another human being, and I felt that liberated and that much peace in my life, imagine how much more peace we could feel if we just gave ourselves a little bit of credit and said, I'm doing the best that I can.
Yep.
How much more happiness and joy would we have? I don't think
bring to other, and that we could bring to other people. That I look at she's now Saint Teresa, but Mother Teresa of Calcutta is, to me in my lifetime, she's like the epitome of a warrior, servant, and a leader. I mean, just incredible. If you study her life, follow, she went to the UN and she was 4 foot nothing, and she stands up in front of all these world leaders and very politely gives them a tongue lashing about that they need to change, their mindset and how they're treating the people around the world. And she was just a little thing, but man, did she believe and defend what she believed. And she didn't have to be in the ghettos of Calcutta. She could have been anywhere.
She's probably one of those people. I mean, just from this experience, I think I can say this, and it's true, that she could chew you out, and no matter what she said to you afterwards, you'd be like, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Someone who can speak the truth to you, and it hurts, but it's pleasant to know that the truth is there. Right. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about your this experience you shared in the book that you co-authored. What was
Healing Happens? Yeah.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about what happens in the book, Healing Happens. You have a unique story. And I think it explains a lot about your mustache. If you're not watching this and you're listening to this on audio only, the way I described what Pat looked like to my daughters, I said, if Santa Claus shaved his beard off in the summer and just left a handlebar mustache that came all the way down past his chin, that's what Pat looks like. And I and I don't mean that in any slight way. If I could grow a mustache like that, I would do it. But I think that understanding your past and where you came from, it's fitting. So could you share that story with us?
Yeah. When I was 3 days old, I was abandoned in an orphanage in Dublin, Ireland, by my birth mother, who at the time was a widow. This was 1957. And I lived in that orphanage until I was 16 months old, when I was adopted by an American family, and who I called my mom and dad. And I have a sister that was American born but also adopted. Our parents couldn't have kids. And almost 40 years later, just shy of 2 months of 40 years later, let me back up. So 1996, I work midnights, can't sleep on my days off. I won't go to bed at normal human being hours. So it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was on the internet in a group chat that was it was called the hashtag Ireland. Back then we called it a pound Ireland, not hashtag. And I said, hey, is anybody actually in Ireland? And the guy goes, well, yeah, I am. He goes, I'm in Dublin. And I said, hey, do you know if St. Patrick's Guild is still on Haddington Road? And he types, how do you know about St. Pat's? I said, well, I lived in the orphanage there. And he goes, so did I. And he goes, when were you there? I said, well, 1957 to 1959. And he goes, oh, I was there in 1975. Have you tried to find your birth mother? I said, no, I hadn't even thought about it, really. I mean, I didn't know where Ireland was even on a map, and probably until I was like in the 3rd grade. So he goes, well, if you're in the orphanage is closed, but the business offices still exist. So if you're interested, call this nun. And so I called her the next day or later on that day. And she said, well, send me a letter proving with proof of who you say you are. So I did. So that was October of 1996. In January of 1997, two and a half, 3 months later, I get up about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and my oldest daughter is down in the kitchen, and she goes, hey, Dad, some lady called. I couldn't understand a word she said, but here's her phone number. And it was the sister in Dublin. So I called her, and she goes, hey, I found your birth mother, and you have a biological sister. I can't give you their information, but do you want them to have your contact info? And I said, yeah, sure. So a couple days later, I come downstairs again, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. My daughter goes, hey, Dad, some lady called, couldn't understand a word she said, but here's her phone number. And it was an Irish number, but not the sister's. So I called it, and here my birth sister answered the phone, and it was 10 o'clock in the evening in Ireland. And so we talked, and she goes, well, Mommy's already gone to bed for the night. Can we call you tomorrow? And what would be a good time? I said, yeah, sure. Is 9 o'clock p.m. Irish time too late? I said, I work midnights, so I don't get up till the afternoon. She goes, no, that'd be great. She goes, Mommy will be so pleased. Tomorrow is her 79th birthday.
No
so
way.
I got to talk for the first time. The two of us actually got to talk to one another was on her 79th birthday. And then oddly, our divine intervention, I prefer divine intervention. I was adopted by a family that my dad's family came from County Limerick back in the 18 something or other. So I was raised in some Irish traditions. And so 1997, it was my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. My wife and I, it was our 17th anniversary. And my sister, American sister, married a guy named Sullivan. It was their 15th wedding anniversary. And we had already decided that in September of 1997, we were going to all go to Ireland together to celebrate our anniversaries. So I happened to tell my birth sister, hey, we're going to be in Ireland in September. You think there's any chance we could meet in person? And she's like, absolutely. So I had to tell my mom and dad about all this. And my mom was mad. I mean, she was pissed. We had 5 grandkids, 5 of our kids all were born. She's like, they're not going to think I'm their real grandma. And she was just mad at me. And I was like, hey, I wasn't doing this on purpose and not to hurt anybody. So she stewed and I mean, she was pissed for the next 8 months. And we get over there and my 2 mothers sat on the front porch of my birth mother's house in County Donegal and talked for 3 days. And it was just that the healing for my birth mother for having given me up, the healing for me to know the reason why I was given up. Because if you're adopted, you have questions. I had no medical history.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the doctor, well, do you have a history of this, this, and this? I don't know. I'm adopted. And so the whole healing process, and then my sister told me later, my Irish sister told me later, she goes, she didn't know about me, my Irish sister. She's 9 years older than I am. And she goes, you know what? For the last 40 years, every November, Mommy would get sick and depressed, and it would last until January, until basically her birthday, every single year. And she goes, I never understood why. And so she told me this at Christmas after we'd come over to Ireland. She goes, Mommy didn't get sick this year. She didn't get depressed. And she goes, I talked to her about it, and she goes, she got depressed every year because my birthday was in November. Mm-hmm. And so every November was a reminder to her, and she never forgave herself type deal. So that healing is, she goes, and she lived for another 4 years. She died when she was 83 years old. And in fact, we went over for the funeral. My sister told me at the funeral, she never, other than getting sick at the end and dying, she goes, she was a completely different person. And it was because that healing experience that we got to meet and share. And then for my mom, it was a healing experience for her because she really resented and was mad at me for finding my birth mother. So I wrote a chapter in the book called Healing Happens, and it's kind of, if you ever saw the movie Philomena, my story is like Philomena, except mine had a good ending. Hers did not. And we were actually we weren't in the same orphanage, but she was in Dublin same time I was in the 50s. So yeah, healing and forgiveness. I'm a firm believer. It's not just a slogan. It can radically change your life.
So I feel like what you're saying is this experience was healing for your birth mother. That's quite obvious. And in some way, it seems like it healed your adoptive mother.
Yep.
And for you, it answered a lot of questions. But once all this healing happened, how did that benefit you throughout up until now and throughout your life? How will that benefit you, that healing experience? Well,
one thing it taught me was don't don't hold stuff in until, I mean, because it just sucks the life out of you. And it literally sucked the life out of my birth mother, you know, every November for 40 years. And so I've learned to be able to have the confidence to apologize to someone if I know that, you know, I've done something to offend them or I did something wrong, is to clear the air. And it doesn't mean we have to be best friends or anything like that, but it does take away the burden that if they want to hold it against me, then that's their problem. But I'm not going to be the cause of their anger because I'm going to apologize. And I've had to do that. I mean, I've done it with my kids. I've had to learn to tell them, hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And I apologize. And so it restores relationships. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't mean you have to become best buddies like with the guy that made your life miserable. You're probably not going to invite him over for dinner, but you know, it's, and I do, I take a lot of guidance from scripture stuff. When you see the forgiveness that happens throughout the history of the Bible, bad things don't happen once that forgiveness takes place. I mean, good things happen, you know, and
you stop carrying that burden.
Yeah.
Of
well,
resentment
on the other person
or whatever it is.
The other person. Yeah. The other person doesn't have to carry that burden either, because you may be the one that's, you know, like Mary Magdalene. You know, if you read and study her, you know, Christ forgiving her for the things she did before meeting him radically changed her life. And unfortunately for Judas, he wasn't able to get over what he did. But it's, I don't know. I believe in miracles. I believe in the reality of God and being created in his image and likeness, and that I have a purpose. And it's very liberating. And, you know, one of the things there was just, and I'm telling you, I can tell you scripture. I can't tell you the chapter, verse, and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, there's a scripture that says, you know, Christ came so that you could have life and have life more abundantly. I believe that because I know I'm living more abundantly now than I was when I was that old Pat Welsh that had all that anger, had my priorities misplaced, wasn't, you know, faithful in my relationship with God.
So would you say that the beginning of abandoning the old Pat Welsh started when you started having a stronger relationship with God, or is there more to it than that?
Well, that was the beginning. I think the beginning was the last time he really got my attention. And I made a conscious decision to grow in my relationship, and my wife and I together. We went through a 4-year biblical studies program through the Catholic Church in the diocese up in Denver, and it was 2.5 hours a week every week for 9 months for 4 years. I mean, it was a school. We took tests, we had homework, we had to write, you know, a kind of journal and keep. It was a very structured study, and in that is when I had a lot of my aha moments in discovering who God is and why that was important in my personal life. So it wasn't just a one-time, hey, revelation. You know, there was no burning bush, you know, like Moses or whatever. but it was a journey that will never end. I'm constantly learning new things about myself, learning insights into Scripture, learning insights into who God is and what He means in my life, and so I'm definitely living more abundantly than I ever had, and I mean in all aspects, emotionally, physically, spiritually.
Either you're a really good actor or what you're presenting is genuine, and I think that it is genuine. But I want to talk a little bit about you made a deliberate decision to make a change in your life, right? God got your attention, you said, and you made a deliberate decision to make that change. When we have those shifts in our life, when we have those calls of repentance or a call to make a change in our life, however you want to phrase it, depending on your beliefs, it's always uncomfortable, right? But we willingly choose to be uncomfortable. And I'm taking a lot of this from Jason Van Camp's book, Deliberate Discomfort. And if you're listening to this right now, if you have not read this book, get it, because it will change your life. Pat, you own 2 copies? You own the audio and the hard copy, and you've
No,
read it both twice?
I don't have the audio. I've read the book twice. I read it once, cover to cover, and then I read it a second time with a legal pad and a highlighter and a pen, and I just dove into it and wrote notes on the side. I'm telling you, it is an incredible book. I'm fortunate to know 2 of the people that are part of it, that wrote parts of it, and it's just it just came out in October. So when I said earlier, I'm constantly learning and growing. Great book. I'm reading Overcome by Jason Redman, and he and Jason Van Camp are friends. And his story, I mean, just the horrific injuries he got over in Iraq or over in the Middle East. So I'm constantly, on my desk over there, I'm reading 6 different books right now at the same time. Yeah, it's just like I'm constantly trying to grow, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And you're right. Deliberate discomfort. There is one verse I can quote you because it speaks to this. It's Matthew 16 verse 24, and I'm paraphrasing it. Is daily deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow Christ. And so every day, it's not just a moment in time where you have that revelation or whatever you want, that conversion experience, whatever you want to call it. It's every single day. You have to get up and consciously, intentionally say to yourself, deny yourself, pick up your cross, whatever that is for that day, and follow Christ. And I have kind of translated that into it's the motto. It's on my challenge coin. It's the motto of my company is do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons. And that's kind of my way of modernizing, if you will. Deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow Christ. Always strive. Do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons. And you're not going to have a perfect life. I mean, some crap is still going to happen to you. Our youngest son, we're a Gold Star family. Our youngest son died serving overseas. And that's 5 years ago. Shit's still going to happen in your life, but it doesn't destroy you because it's not what happens to you. It's what's happened inside you. And so it's you can have horrific things happen to you, and it won't destroy you if you have the right mindset. You have the right relationship with God and with yourself.
Man, I don't have much to add to that. You nailed it. I wrote down this though when you quoted that scripture from Matthew 16:24 about picking up your cross. If you tie this into Jason Van Camp's book, Deliberate Discomfort, every day pick up your cross, and deliberately choose to be uncomfortable and go do what's right.
Yeah.
Go serve other people. Go make amends. Go make yourself better. Go choose to do something that you don't know. Go choose to learn something that you don't understand. Go to choose to forgive somebody that doesn't deserve your forgiveness. And if by doing that, your burdens will be lighter.
Yep.
That victim mentality that we as human beings default to simply because of our existence will cease to exist because we're choosing to be accountable and choosing to say, you know what, I would rather be uncomfortable than allow myself to suffer at the expense of someone else's decisions or life circumstances. I'm in control. And when we choose to pick up that cross, or we choose to deliberately be uncomfortable, we're choosing to be accountable. And through that accountability, there's freedom. That's the only way to have freedom, is through accountability. Say, this happened to me, but it doesn't define me. This happened to me, but it doesn't have control over me. Right? And when we choose to let it control us, we give up our freedom. And Pat, clearly you're living a life where you are behind the wheel of the vehicle that's driving you wherever you go. You get to choose where you're going. You get to choose what happens to you. And that comes through experience. We can talk about these things all the time, right? But until you choose to put yourself in that situation and choose to deliberately be uncomfortable and experience that, you will not be in control.
Yeah, I agree. And that part of that choice is also having a mindset of obedience. I don't make my own rules and regulations. How I'm to live my life is clearly spelled out for me in the scriptures that I study, and so I have to choose every day to be obedient to what Christ calls us to, what God created me for. And let me give you just an example. Moses. He was 40 years old when he kills the Egyptian that was beating a slave, and he disappears off into the wilderness, and he wanders around the wilderness and lives for another 40 years. And then when he's 80, he has that burning bush encounter, dramatic encounter with God, and God is calling him to his mission, to what he was created for. And Moses wants to argue with God. Yeah, but I'm not a good speaker. Pick somebody else. Yeah, but. And he's given all these excuses. And it wasn't until he intentionally chose to be obedient did he then get the skills and the courage to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, for the right reasons.
Yeah. He chose to be uncomfortable and take on something that he didn't understand, but had enough faith to believe that he could overcome it. And I think we encounter those experiences in a non-religious manner all the time, right? Yeah. Something happens to us, but we choose to just, even when we are truly a victim of a situation or someone else's actions, we choose to remain in that state because it's easier than taking accountability for our actions. And before I forget, I'm going to put a link in the show notes to this book for Deliberate Discomfort. And it will change your life. If you read the whole thing and you do the little practical applications in it, I promise you it'll change your life. It was just this morning that I started the online master course for this book that Jason has recently come out with. And it goes into even more detail. They talk about the concepts of this book in a conversation between the people who authored it, the different people sharing their stories. And it's as if a conversation similar to this. And then you go in and they have little homework assignments. And as I was working through that, I was like, man, this is This is powerful stuff. What it is it's this conversation that you and I are having turned into a college level course that's going to change your life. So I share this with you, not simply just to promote Jason Van Camp, but because I believe that by doing this, you can overcome and change anything that you're experiencing. That you're no longer gonna just have pity for yourself. You'll have that call, the action to become better than you were yesterday, and you'll learn how to build that foundation that will allow you to strive and settle for nothing less than what you're fully capable of. I think that if you're in the darkest moments of your life and you feel like you can't carry on anymore, it's this uncomfortable decision that you're going to have to make to start having peace and happiness and joy in your life again, and to help you find purpose in what you're doing and fulfill that purpose that you've been called to here on this earth. And when you find that purpose, that is when you begin to blossom. When a seed is buried in the ground, it has to push up through the dirt, right? Push through it and use it as fertilizer, because you need that fertilizer to become who you're supposed to be. And if you look like a sunflower, how tall does a sunflower get? Like 9-10 feet, right? It's a massive, beautiful flower that provides food and seeds. And what's the unique thing about sunflowers is when they all blossom, they always turn and look at the light. They look to the goodness, right? And so if the light is blocked by some of the sunflowers, and one of the sunflowers has that light, do you know what the other sunflowers do, Pat?
No.
They look at the sunflower that's looking at the light.
Right.
I'm not making that up.
I take a 3 to 5 mile walk or a hike up, in some of the mountain areas around here every day. That's how I start my day off. And the last 2 days, the section, the path I have taken is strewn. I mean, hundreds of sunflowers along the path. And I actually thought this yesterday. Man, they're all facing east because it's early in the morning and the sun's out, and they're all facing east. And I was like, man, I need to come back and walk this at 5 o'clock and see if they've all turned and followed the sun. And but I didn't know that they would, if they're blocked by a sunflower, then they would focus on the flower that's getting the sun.
It's not even if they're blocked. So if they cannot find the light, they turn to another sunflower that has the light and relies upon them. Yeah. So I think there's a really strong metaphor here that if you cannot find the light in your life, find someone who has it and look to them until you see it for yourself.
Yeah. Excellent.
That is how you will realize that the shit you're buried in is fertilizer. Turn to someone else who has the light. Turn to someone else. And if you have no one else you can find in your life, Pat and I are here for you. I guarantee it. You can find Pat on LinkedIn, and he's got a large following. And I know you would respond to him. You said, "Hey, I heard your interview with Preston on Metal Mentality, and I can't find the light." I know for a fact that you would respond and help them find that light. You would be that light for them. I would be too. You can go onto my website for the show here at metalmentality.org. Contact me on there. Contact me on my personal email, preston@metalmentality.org. And I'm even going to give you my cell phone number right now. And if you cannot find that light and you think I'm a liar even, I want you to call me. I want you to text me, and I'll tell you that light is there. My number is, ready? Get your pen, write this down. This is my personal cell phone number. It's 385-200-1563. And I will show you that there is light. I will show you that shit you're buried in is the fertilizer that you need to become the best version of yourself. That comes from Jason Van Camp's book, not me. I can't take credit for it, but I share it with you because it's 100% true.
And
prove me wrong.
No matter how small you may think the matter is, it's important to you. I had a guy call me July 5th, and he's going, Pat, I'm having a really bad time. This weekend, this time every year. He was a combat vet, a combat engineer, and it was July 4th. It pushed him. I mean, he had a bad time because of all the fireworks. Mm-hmm. And that only comes around once a year, and you think, oh, I'll get through it. But man, pick up the phone and call somebody. And that's what he did. And so we talked for about an hour, and he just, actually, I listened for about an hour, and he just needed somebody to understand and listen to what he's gone through. And here's what in the training I do. I tell everybody, it's one of the things I close my training with is we all have a life sentence. And I'm not talking about going to prison for life. We all have a life sentence. And that sentence is, every one of us has one. And that sentence is, in one sentence, what are people going to say at your funeral? And if whatever that is, they're saying in one sentence the impact you had on their life. And, and go to a funeral and listen to people sharing their stories. Oh, he could light up a room with his smile. She could do whatever it is, they're sharing your impact on their life. But here's my challenge to you. What do you want them to say at your funeral? Write your own life sentence. What do you want them to say at your funeral? And then ask yourself, what are you doing to live that sentence? So, and your sentence will change over time and experience. Mine has. And now my life sentence is, Preston, if you come to my funeral, I hope you, this is what you'd say. Pat impacted my life. That's what I want. That's all I would want people to say at my funeral. Not that Pat had a great mustache, or Pat was really smart, or Pat was a good cop. No, I want people to say Pat impacted my life, and then I have to intentionally live every day up to that sentence. And so, even if you're going through shit, what do you want people to say about you? And then focus on that. And hopefully it's something positive. If it's something negative, man, reach out and don't be afraid to. I have friends that are in the professionally in the mental health and wellness, and that's the thing they say they have the hardest time with is people are afraid to ask for help. I mean, help professionally. If it's that bad, as opposed to you're just having a bad day and you want somebody to vent to, but it's really bad, ask for help. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I'll tell you what, I'd rather sit down and have a beer with you and we talk about, what you ask for help and here's how things are going. I'd rather be doing that than going to your funeral.
Absolutely.
So don't be afraid, and do the right thing. And the right thing is to ask for help.
Oh, Pat, that you answered my final question. I'm kind of pissed off that I didn't get to ask you. I was going to say, what would you tell someone who's going through a hard time right now and feels hopeless? I think you just answered it. Ask for help. I'd rather sit there and talk to you and listen to all your problems for an hour than go to your funeral. I think that's how you would answer. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
I'm not just giving advice. I had to ask for help when I was going through. I was having full-blown panic attacks, and when you're a cop, that's not a good thing to happen in the middle of a shift. And so I did. I tried to suck it up, Buttercup. Embrace the suck. All those slogans. The reality was, I was beyond sucking it up. I needed help, and I asked for it, and I got it. I got professional counseling, and I I took Xanax for a while just so I could sleep, and then talk through with a professional counselor, a psychologist, and I had some revelations and got through it. So I'm speaking from experience. I'm not saying it because it's the thing to say. It's a reality, and it made a difference in my life.
You're absolutely right. And Pat, we're about out of time here. This has been a very enlightening conversation. It's been very real. It's been powerful. I don't know if you felt the power of this conversation between the two of us. And anytime I get to have a conversation with someone like this, I'm extremely grateful for the person's willingness to be vulnerable and open up and share themselves with me. And I'm grateful for you for doing that today with the audience. And I'll just leave with this, that whatever you're going through, it's temporary. And whatever you're going through can be used as a catalyst for you to become greater than you were yesterday. Tomorrow is a new day. Tomorrow you get to decide how you're going to show up for yourself. Show up for yourself every single day, and you'll make it through it. If you need help, reach out to someone. People care. People want to help.
Hey guys, be sure to follow the Mental Mentality Podcast on social media. And as always, if you find value in the show, please leave a review and rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. But more importantly, share this podcast with someone you know who would benefit from the messages from the guests on each episode. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter @Mental Mentality.